Okay, I do want to jump into some of the specifics of the different guidances that we've got out here today. So we have the EMA guidance. I want to spend a little bit of time looking at that, starting with Ulrike and then Tiffany, and then jump into the MHRA guidance and see what we can take away as industry from those. So Ulrike, starting with you, you joined CureVac at a really great time. For the industry. You joined in July 2020. So you've experienced, right, the revolution in regulations from the beginning, and it's been 5 years. So I'm curious, what do you think has been the most distinct change you've noticed, right, in your interactions with the agency in terms of the working with an mRNA product? And, have you seen this change or evolution sort of reflected in the guidance itself that just came out from EMA?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was definitely a really constituting time for mRNA, and before there were, of course, RNA activities going on, or there were also clinical studies done. That's still a bit of an exotic era around it, right? And while it became rather a household, discussions with the regulators, I think you see that also they had seen a lot more in the past 5 years than in the 5 years before that. Still, I think the field is growing, and if we look at mRNA-based immunotherapies, like this MHRA guidance is now about, it's still expanding, and I think there is a lot more to come.
Yeah.
So we are still in a nascent status, right? And it will be that way for quite a while. And there are new cancer mRNA immunotherapies coming, knock on wood, and it's I think it's still a very, very interesting time. But I wouldn't say that the regulatory interactions changed in the meantime. I mean, during the pandemic, you really had very fast access to regulators. It was different, right?
Yeah.
But it was not different in a way from the support or the discussions, from the content policy.
We're still bridging right into from your vaccine, from this traditional, right, prophylactic vaccine into that therapeutic realm. And so I think there's a lot still that we're trying to figure out and iron out together. Tiffany, as a former regulator, I'd be curious to get your sense on the EMA guidance. Were there any aspects of this guidance that surprised you?
No, not necessarily. The field has gained a tremendous amount of knowledge in the last few years very quickly. And it's been an unusual set of circumstances. What I like about this guidance is that it's very clear. It almost provides a regulatory checklist for consideration as you put together your entire package.
Okay. So in terms of it's really laying out a very clear line of requirements for us. Is that what you're essentially saying?
Yeah, I think it's a great reality check that you can go through that guidance document and look at the material that you have in hand that you're going to go to the agency with, the regulatory authority, and say, do we have these? It's a great chance for you to do a reality check, an honesty check, like, hey, have we really addressed this particular line item here?
Ulrike, do you feel the same way? Did you think it was very much just sort of a nice checklist? I mean, I know we've had a number of different pharmacopoeial guidances, right, or guidelines, I should say, that have come out that have outlined some of the quality CQAs and different analytical methods, right, to best demonstrate those. Did you feel that the EMA guidance was a decent, very concise checklist of what we should do and was in line with some of the guidance or guidelines that we've had to date?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, there are no real surprises in there. It's the current status of what is expected and what can be expected from prophylactic vaccines with regards to quality, definitely.
Okay. How about, and this is a question for both of you, since, we have a lot of folks working on prophylactic vaccines, but we also have a lot of folks that are trying to put together programs that, as we've said, they're not prophylactic vaccines, right? We're working in a wide variety of different modalities, or with different modalities, we're working in a wide array of therapeutic approaches. So, to what extent do you feel like this guidance from EMA is going to be a good or useful resource for companies that are working on therapeutics, or like a protein replacement therapeutic, or, for example, right, an advanced therapy approach, gene editing? Maybe we can start with Tiffany and jump to you, Ulrike.
Sure. So I want to first mention you have to be a little bit careful when you start to take a guidance document that's very specifically written for a product and a specific purpose in extrapolating too much from that, because oftentimes the way that the products work is very different. Oftentimes indications and the potential safety risk profiles are very different, right? Yep. And you will definitely see that as you move from prophylactic mRNA vaccines for infectious disease to, some of these cancer indications, right? So be very careful about that. That being said, I think reading other guidance documents is very valuable because it broadens your perspective on the larger agency thinking. There are times that you can potentially borrow some information, or that it may get you thinking a little bit differently about your strategy, some of the potential risks, patients' safety, how you might structure and design your clinical study. Just be very careful about over extrapolating. And I think the gene therapy space saw that early on, when there weren't a lot of advanced gene therapies, trying to bring safety directly over from the monoclonal antibody space. Yes, there are things you can borrow, but you just need to be very careful, and a lot of approaches will need to be modified.
Okay, that's a really good point. Ulrike, do you agree? Are you feeling the same way? I know this is one of the biggest challenges as we bridge the gap into, as we forward our way into therapeutic approaches. The question is, what can we carry over from the regulation of prophylactic vaccines into that therapeutics realm? What's your take in terms of how you're approaching this? This is a prophylactic vaccine guidance. What experience have you had in terms of, knowing whether or not it's going to be applicable to other therapies? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, boringly enough, I again agree with Tiffany. So I think you can borrow the principles, right? You should have a look at, and certainly some of the, or most of the CMC principles, you can have a look and interpret and see how much is translatable to your setting. But then if it comes down to the clinic, I think you really have to look at what the treatment purpose of your product is, and what you aim to do for the patients there. And if you are going into, I'm taking now mRNA again as an example, if you then go into cancer indications, you might likely have a higher dose that you would apply. You might likely have a different dosing schedule as compared to prophylactic vaccines. And then you would also need to consider maybe with regards to impurities or with regards to other critical parameters, how that could translate into the clinical reality for the patients with cancer. And you have to look at the individual product. You can definitely borrow some principles, but you have to make it relevant for the indication that you want to treat.